All right, welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. This is the second episode of our Big Biller season, and I have Stuart Mitchell on today. He's built close to $1 million in the last year in quite a tight marketplace given the pandemic. He's a cybersecurity recruiter with Stott and May based in LA. He broke down his strategy, how he goes about things, how he wins business, and I think you'll really enjoy it. If you want to figure out how you can build more, automate more, get more time back, make more money, hit me up because we're going to release our mastermind course very soon. And I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Love working with the technology partners that we have. Our system, Vincere, and how we get that working with Audro, with Sourcebreaker, and to all the great advisors out there that have helped us over the years. Big shout out to you all. Thank you so much. And we will be back with another great guest next week. All right. We are live with Stuart Mitchell from Stott and May in LA. How are you, sir?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm all right. The last time we caught up, it was November 2019.
Yeah.
How time has flied, eh?
Remember when you could just catch up in person, face to face? What a time.
I know. Tell me. So things were flying for you then. LA was buzzing. Well, what's life been like since the pandemic?
Good question. So yeah, I mean, life was great. Personally in a really, really high spot, on my way to a good year. I'd actually just got engaged. Stott and May were growing and everything was great. And it seems like such a boom time ago, where everything was kind of, you look back at almost like the wonder years now. It's like, what a time, 2019. Life has been, I think, tough since the pandemic, but also, we've got to kind of look at ourselves in terms of we might be a little bit more fortunate here in LA than potentially some of the people back home or even some of the areas in the States in terms of, we've been under relatively difficult restrictions, but, being allowed outside in California all year round is such a plus, right? I can go and play golf. You can go for a hike. You can walk on the beach. Up until recently, you've been able to eat outside, and that's a much more pleasurable experience in LA than it is in, a New York or a London in December, where freezing your ass off, and
I'm so miserable.
Probably got an umbrella up above your head while you're eating. So more fortunate than most. And then, honestly, market-wise, work-wise, yeah, we had a tough few months. I think that the whole world did, particularly in kind of response to the pandemic. But I would say kind of falling into particularly Q4 of last year, things took a positive turn and I kind of feeling that in the new year across the States. Again, I think the UK is in slightly different circumstances, but we've got off to a pretty good start to the year. We wrapped up pretty nicely last year. So there's feelings of positivity, but I think sometimes, bad days are really bad days in the pandemic, right? I think we all feel pretty lonely. I feel like we all feel pretty trapped. So it's, I think everything is kind of magnified.
And congratulations on getting engaged. Is that a real engagement, or is it one of those visa plays for the green card?
Depends who you ask. No, so we've been together for a few years, and honestly, she was putting more pressure on me than I was putting pressure on her.
Here he goes, my friend.
So obviously, pros and cons to that. Unfortunately, my Bridget, she worked in a pretty high-profile industry in the fashion space. So some of that affiliated with jewelry. So she had pretty expensive taste. So put a lot of pressure on me when it came to getting the engagement ring. But yeah, the pressure kind of came from her and also her parents, rather than myself. But obviously the visa and green card, never a bad thing either.
So for anybody listening, Stuart is a cybersecurity recruiter. Is there a certain niche that you focus on in that?
So there's certain areas where I've certainly been more prevalent and done really well. And, you know, for those listening, this will make it a little bit more sense if this is your world. But we've had a ton of success in the security engineering and detection and response on the customer side. You know, I look around and there are, you know, every day there seems to be another company jumping into the security space. And I think to do well in this space, there's two ways about it. And I think, you know, some other recruiters, and potentially giving some tips away here, probably don't make a ton of clarity. They say I'm a security recruiter. And so some security recruiters specialize solely in placing within kind of cyber solution companies, you know, vendors, etc. But this is a different skill set. You're typically placing salespeople, product managers, kind of software engineers building the product. And, you know, we just hired somebody here because that is a good market. I think it's a very different market and a different skill set. Where I've had success and where, as a business, traditionally Stott and May have had more success is kind of on the customer side, placing like pure security professionals into tech companies, finance companies,
into Netflix of this world, or
exactly, and that's where we've had more success. Again, it's not saying that one side is better than the other. It's just, you know, I've spent years building a brand in the marketplace, and people previous to me who have also done really good numbers. That's where we've had our successful kind of billers and periods.
How's the podcast gone?
Good question. Not as well as yours. Takes dedication. I had a really good start. Yeah. So honestly, the discipline kind of slipped on that, and it took some reflection in terms of how much I respect somebody who, you know, consistently provides content, because the guests slip away quickly. The things to talk about really slip away. And then, you know, it's always a great idea. And look, I think I ended up firing sort of 10 or 15 episodes out. And I think you have to plan like 2, 3, 4 months in advance with these things, or you really struggle with things to talk about. And that's kind of where I hit a wall. And what's even more, I guess, frustrating is my reputation in the industry has only grown. So now it would probably be a lot easier for me to find guests. But yeah, it's an area where I could have done better, particularly in the pandemic when I was less busy. I think I could have really kind of blocked a ton of episodes and fired a load out. But yeah, not as well as yours, mate, unfortunately.
Well, it's been a few years in the making. Okay, let me put some scenario-based questions to you.
Yeah.
If you had to start again, fresh start from day one, how would you go about winning clients in America? Would you start with the candidates, or would you start with the clients first? Which in that scenario?
So I'm jumping off the plane from Heathrow today. This is my first day in America. Okay. So there's two ways to go about this. This is a cop-out answer. I hate cop-out answers. Look, you can't do anything without candidates, you know, and you can't do anything without knowing your candidates. Any new starter I have, I think it's really important to understand your market and build a roster of candidates. But on the flip side, you got to have somewhere to put them. So for me, it's building a network and not necessarily selling to your clients on day one, but building a network of hiring managers. And again, like, the rope is shorter and longer in every company. If I've got to build month one, I'm probably getting really aggressive, you know, sending specs, smashing my outbound dials and getting people on the phone to talk about these candidates. You know, if the leash is longer and I'm kind of looking at, okay, let's build a sustainable marketplace, I'm more kind of flipping things in terms of like reverse headhunting my clients, really understanding them, and then kind of flipping that. And that's something that I found to be mega successful. It's something I preach pretty readily, is do something for them, and then in turn they will do something for you. So that's something I would do. And look, you know, I make a ton of business relationships, making friends with people, taking them out for drinks, taking them out for dinner, etc. You know, in a normal world, I would absolutely blitz my credit card to go out and see as many people as possible. And that's something, you know, I would always encourage people to do when you can. You know, it's...
So to translate that from somebody who doesn't understand the lingo,
yeah,
there's a job out there with a big company and you're thinking, I'd like to get in with Netflix. So you approach somebody who works for Netflix already,
Yeah,
offering them advice on their career or
yeah,
headhunting them to something else. You
yeah,
befriend them, and then they're like, "Hey, you're really good at your job. Actually, would you work our job?" And then you say,
yeah. Absolutely,
What do
absolutely.
you
I
say
think
that?
it's
Here's something I had prepared earlier.
yeah, exactly. And I think, look, as long as you're, it's hard to balance that loaded motive, right? It's hard to then go, oh, by the way, and then flick on a PowerPoint and go, just so you should say that, and then kind of fire out a full pitch. But, people always want to talk about themselves. That's why I'm on the podcast. People always love to talk about themselves. So if you give them an opportunity to have the stage, and then you can also, in those situations, okay, what problems do you have hiring? Are you on anything right now? Okay, what's your talent strategy? Okay, well, look, I know product security engineers are really hard to find. I've just done that for X company and Y company. Would you be interested in seeing a couple of people that I put through the process? Is that kind of level caliber that you'd be talking about? So that's the way that's worked for me, and I think it's a pretty old. I don't know if it's old school. Some businesses do it, some businesses don't.
Quite
As long as
logical.
they think, what's up?
I think it's quite logical.
Yeah, I completely agree. And kind of develop. Like, I think sometimes we try and get product in front of clients as much as possible, but it's very difficult to. I think Stott and May are really good. I think my company is really good. I think my team is really good. But if I'm sending a candidate in the exact same format as anybody else, it's very difficult for me to get that across because I'm just doing it the same way as other people. And look, specking has a
Is there
history of
anything
working.
special you do to
Yeah.
present the candidate? Is there can you give away any of that?
So how I like to present candidates either in a way that you and me would talk rather than so look, here's why I think they're good, here's some of the things they've done, rather than that kind of traditional 7 bullet point. Actually, I hate bullet points. I think if I get something in my inbox with bullet points, it sells, right? And I'm not interested because they're selling something, and that's pretty hypocritical of me as a recruiter to be anti-sales. But I'm just like, all right, what's the angle?
You like the informality of it.
Yeah, I truly do, and I think I get to the point. This is who they are. This is why they're good. This is who I've done it for. Like, let me know. I get an unbelievable response rate, and that's text, LinkedIn, email. Email is probably my lowest response rate because email. I always say to people, I was like, email is dead. Like, and that's not necessarily true and probably harsh and unfair, but you look at 20 years ago, 30 years ago when maybe your parents got mail and they're like, crap. Okay, maybe interesting. But that's the way they look at it, even without opening it. And I do feel like email has gone a similar way because it's so easy. And, if we look at ourselves as recruiters, A, there's other recruiters chasing, B, there's service providers, selling hardware, software. So, all right, any decision maker that I get, 100 emails a day. So I've got to be pretty damn good to get something across.
Yeah, unless you're sequencing them. So
yeah, and I do think there are automation tools out there that I think are automate where possible. I think particularly on speccing, where I don't necessarily think you're going to have all of your business through speccing, but you can really maximize your efficiency by sequencing and potentially following up with something of use and just making sure that they're monitored efficiently. If you're just firing and hoping and then not really having those follow-up touch points, you're really going to struggle. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 emails for me to go, even just to get a no, like, oh, yeah, look, I appreciate the follow-up, but that's not right for me or whatever. And I do think as humans, we innately tend to go back after 2 or 3, maybe 5 times, like, look, appreciate your persistency. This is the person you need to talk to, or, you know what, okay, yeah, actually, you caught me on a day where we thought we had a candidate identified and they fell through the cracks. So, look, the more you put yourself out there, obviously, timing, etc., and as long as you're putting quality product, that's important. But yeah, I think the automation and sequencing is really important because then you get kind of that level of consistency and follow-up, which a lot of recruiters do lack.
With your business development, then the next step is you follow up on your specs, I presume. Is that how that works? And is that HR led, or is that down the other route, or a mixture of both?
So I've always built relationships with both, but kind of leaning on the line managers. Some of the some of the bigger clients that I've brought on have been line manager led, but I think kind of treading carefully and respectfully of the role of recruitment, and really kind of embedding. One of the things that I found is really useful is I lean on talent a lot more once the process is going. So a lot of the companies that I represent are, pre-IPO tech companies where it's very difficult for me to actually gauge the value, particularly when we get to like an offer stage where it's like, okay, well, 200 grand, but really it's 400 grand, but I actually don't know what that means. So, I have what I'll do is I'll have internal talent kind of share the offer because,
Sure.
Some offers are really basic, right? 100 grand, 20 days holiday, 10% bonus, company car. Fine, I can roll that out. But when there's kind of moving facets and I don't really understand the mechanisms of the business, most of my clients kind of roll offers out now. And I think if you said that to a UK agency, it's like, no, you've got to manage and control.
I do exactly the same thing. I prefer, because essentially they're going to have to buy into that person anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you run your day? Has that changed? Are you strict with it? Do you have what does it look like?
So how I run my day is I set 9 objectives, and three of them are do or die. 3 of them are you should get this done today, and 3 of them are if you do this, you've had a really good day. Some of the things that I am trying to improve on is staying rigid to that, right? As recruiters, we get an email and we're like, drop everything and deal with this. Or, that client that you've been pushing and waiting 2 weeks for terms on, you realize like, oh, I have to go back to that right now, even though they've made me wait 2 weeks. It's like trying to really.
What's the 3 things that are do or die?
So it could depend on a daily basis. So for me, look, I have, and this is something that I've been very fortunate about, is I've done well, and that's made my job even easier, because now I have some of the best names in tech to share with other clients, and they can verify really quickly. So my business development strategy is, hey, I've done this for X, Y, and Z. You should use me. Okay, it's a really shit pitch, but it works because it's real.
Confirmation.
And so I don't have to work on business development. And I do get, I guess over the last 9 months, I've had inbound BD requests, which is every recruiter's dream, right?
Yeah,
But it's started to happen for me over the last year or so. So for me, most of what I'm doing is delivery, and I'll prioritize that by, probably not the traditional A, B, and C job, but okay, if I do 4 hours today, how many resumes can I get to this? So I shoot to deliver to between 3 and 5 resumes a day. Then my second metric is just ensuring, because I now have a team of 5, which we've grown quite nicely here in LA, and so now I have a team of 5. So ensuring they have the mechanism and kind of everything they need to deliver successfully for the day. I'm not a micromanager, so I can go day, 2 days without even speaking to the team, because most of the people we have are pretty senior. I think we have a principal joining this week, and then 2 senior consultants and 2 consultants. So I obviously spend some time with those folks. And look, then the rest of it is kind of still networking on the BD side. Like, I'll never drop BD. Everyone gets excited when they have 8, 10, 12 jobs on, but ultimately it's a case of best time to do BD is when you're busy. I know it's a recruitment cliche, but it makes your life a lot easier. And I think when you don't need the business comes to you, rather than, okay, I have nothing on my desk, I've got to send 1,000 specs, I've got to make 100 phone calls, I've got to talk to everybody. You just come across in such a better way. So I think one of the biggest things is just ensuring that that continuous flow of business comes in, because the best business you can get is actually like, hey, well, we're actually not hiring or advertising right now, but we do have a security hire we want to make in March. And it's like, great, let's automate a call for end of Feb. And then you're ahead of it before anyone else gets on it, rather than, okay, this job's on LinkedIn, I'm going up against the 5 agencies next door, the UK businesses, who are all like pretty good. We're all trained relatively similar. Some are better than others, but ultimately they're pretty good. And then you have like the 10, 15, 25 American agencies that are going at it. And it's like, all right, well, do I really want to get in a pissing match with a bunch of other agencies, or I just want to work with people who, know and trust my name? And that's not going to be the stuff on job boards, because if you're chasing the stuff on the job boards, you can get in a price war and things like that, and it's got no interest.
Do you, are you focused on LA or the West Coast as a whole? So
I've ended up landing in the Bay Area. Used to be physically, now it's metaphorically. But yeah, I mean, I've had most of my success with the big tech pre-IPO companies. And I think that's because, I got into one or two and it just opens up the doors. And like, I think for me, I'm getting the brands that are quite easy to sell. And there's such a difference in recruitment when you reach out and you're like, hey, I have a role with these folks. And it's like, cool. Rather than, hey, I work with this, biscuit startup who are revolutionizing the way we wrap up biscuits and they're going to be worth 10 billion. It's like, no, it's not. I'm going to kick the tires and then I really have to oversell it, but I don't really believe in it. Rather than, hey, these folks are going to IPO this year. You're probably going to make $500,000. Yeah. Are you interested? Makes my life a lot easier. And then I do a good job because they're making my job easy so I can go and do work for others. So that's where I've landed in these kind of like large scale software-led businesses who are either pre or just post IPO. I do have other clients across the country, but and I guess my candidate pool has kind of expanded because pretty much everything I do is remote right now, at least 80%. So I've managed to get like huge packages for people living in Michigan and living in Idaho and living in like such a good life for them.
Have you seen that? We're hearing a lot about the people. The mass exodus out of California. Are you seeing that yourself from a talent perspective?
Yeah, I am. And there's even people that are taking some level of pay cuts to do it. I know. I think it was Stripe. They're a fintech business. We're offering like a 20K relocation bonus, but you took a pay cut to get out.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, Irish.
Okay, I think I knew that actually, but yeah, I think they were offering like people like, hey, go live in Arizona, go live in Texas or whatever. And to be honest, Texas is a completely different beast right now in terms of the scale and size of businesses that are going there. And I think there will be huge cultural difference between California and Texas that people aren't recognizing yet in terms of like your right. California, you have every single right in the world and more and a comfy blanket and whatever, because California is probably the most liberal and protected place. And a lot of people like that. And that's great. But, Texas is not. And there's, a lot of people have moved there. There's great opportunity. There's no state income tax, paying close to Bay Area salaries. Tesla are there. Oracle are there. Like, it's huge. But, you look at certain things that you can't do because it's still very religion heavy, like underlined, and there's other certain factors. So, but I mean, Texas must be like a hotter market. And we're hiring somebody who will eventually go to Texas and manage Texas, because I think a lot of people do Texas, but don't really dive in. And it's such a big market. Like, I think
it's definitely a growth market now. As you mentioned, there are lots of businesses migrating to Austin, Dallas as well. I think traditionally UK recruitment firms based themselves in Houston, and it was a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of rates, and like it was just very saturated, like PSL focused market. So this is a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, and it's I think I see a few in Austin. I don't think I've seen anyone really grow yet. I think like
nobody's scaled. I think Austin Fraser probably have done the best there.
Yeah.
With James Lafferty there, but I don't know if many have exceeded that outside of like one of the big boys.
Yeah.
With regards to COVID and winning business in the Bay Area, before COVID, was there a requirement to do more face-to-face meetings? Has that changed? Are you finding now that people are you get more access to people because they'll jump onto Zoom quicker?
So in answer to your first question, honestly, I probably pushed the needle more on face-to-face meetings than customers did. I really enjoy it. I'm probably better in person. I think I'm quite good at reading people. I tried to be a professional poker player obviously I'm not that good, but at reading people, but I tried to be a professional poker player when I was younger and made money for about a year doing it. So I'm pretty good at reading people and situations. So I always used to enjoy getting in front of people. So I would tend to push the needle, and honestly, I like the travel. I like to go and take clients out. I really enjoyed that aspect. I think customers would have been fine jumping on a Zoom with me even pre-pandemic, but potentially it was me showing them my commitment, I guess, to some extent. Also, it does differentiate me to, the folks who are like incubating in England that actually can't be there. And I can say, look, I can be there. I'm going to see X, Y, and Z. I can be there next week. I think it differentiates me from these folks. But now, I find it really easy to get people on Zoom because also people crave human interaction that aren't the same faces they're seeing every day. So, hey, let's have a chat. I'm relatively referenceable, so you can have a conversation with me in terms of your situation, hiring, etc. And people are relatively available. And then even to go to your point, from even when like candidates and clients are interviewing, it's so much easier and more seamless because someone doesn't have to book half a day. You don't have to get the same people in the office every day. Like, all right, we'll run through Zoom meetings and we can do that on Tuesday, like rather than 3 weeks from now. So there are plenty of positives. But I do think I hate saying this because it's very presumptive, but when COVID is over, I expect to spend a good amount of time back up in the Bay Area just because I've placed a ton of people who I'd love to meet. I've placed, in pretty interesting positions. And also, I've built some relationships virtually. I probably owe a few people a few beers. I think a few people probably owe me a few beers. But that's how I've always enjoyed. It's the best part of this job, right? To be perfectly honest, aside from maybe the money side, the best part is actually syncing up, meeting with people and enjoying the successes that you have together. I can't think of many better things to do in this game.
Do you think LA is going to recover? When I look at it, like the homeless problem, when I was there, I was like pretty shocked by it in Venice. And now that stretches the whole way into the city. It's
I mean, that's a tough one. I fear more for New York. I spent a bit of time in New York at the back end of last year with my in-laws, and I lived there for nearly 5 years, and to see every restaurant is dying, and it's the people move to New York because of the access to restaurants, the bars. You have to be there to work. It's such a great city. It's a walkable city, and you have everything on your doorstep, right? It's amazing, particularly when I think you're younger. I think there's no better place to be. Without that, why are you going to New York, paying a fortune to live in a shoebox? So I worry more for New York. From an LA perspective, look, I mean, the homeless situation isn't great, and it's a real underlying socioeconomic issue that is a completely different topic. But I think LA, from a recruitment city and from a tech perspective, I think it'll be fine. There's plenty of businesses. I mean, I see around a couple of other businesses. Businesses are growing. The opportunity is there. Some really hot companies are coming to Irvine down in SoCal right now. So I think LA as a city, it will be fine. When they really address the homeless issue, I don't know. It's probably that and the traffic are really the two kind of reasons people don't like LA.
Let me ask you a question just from a UK recruiter standpoint. It's a golden age of getting to live the dream that you did of getting over to New York and living it up and going out to LA and doing that and getting that visa. Do you think how do you envisage that world moving forward?
So look, first of all, I'm confident it'll be back because we're moving into a more liberal presidential era. I know and my first visa was under a liberal president, and it was relatively straightforward. And then I had a renewal, but I think the visa situation will be back. And look, I'm a huge champion of this journey. I've had a ton of fun. I'm staying. Some people are going back. They want to make their money and go back, but I really hope that this isn't impacted and everyone gets the opportunity to do what I did. Because
I agree. I did Australia, I did Canada, and we obviously got to jump around from the business we had. It's the best experience you'll ever have.
I completely agree. And look, the reality is, we're really in a fortunate situation because we're not going out and curing diseases. We're not going out on the front line. We make relatively wealthy people, slightly wealthier, and help protect billionaires' assets from a cybersecurity perspective. We're not changing the course. So we're really fortunate as recruiters that those opportunities are out there, and those that are watching this have found themselves in this space. And you can really cash in your chips, because I also think, I don't know how good I would be in the UK anymore, because it's been such a long time, but the market is so saturated, fees are so low. Bridget would love to move over there. I'm like, look, I wouldn't make any money and would be back at the start. So, we have a good life here in the US. And for me, it's a case of, if this opportunity ever falls your way, go and do it. The reality is there's such big opportunity. And I do think, like you said, you probably have a better chance of living it up. I think most UK recruiters live it up while they're still living with their parents, in East London and whatnot. But you can really live it up and have a really good time on the way in the US. So it's just such a...
What was the name of the bar that we bumped into each other in?
Brennan's.
Well, we'll leave it here, but hopefully I can get to buy you a pint of Brennan's next time over there.
I look forward to it. It's a great place. And it's a proper dive bar, which is exactly where we belong.
Thanks, Stuart. Take care.
Pleasure. Cheers, mate.